First off, I'd like to thank these amazing people who decided to support me directly and make my work here on the platform so much easier. And remember, if you also want to help me out, the missile knows where the join button is at all times. Hello pilots, welcome back. How have your battles been? Mine have been going well. Today I'm flying what a lot of people call a point-and-click jet, mostly because it's got two super strong PL5E2s with ECCM. But honestly, I see it a bit differently. It's not that the point-and-click part is wrong, but I think if you focus too much on the missiles in this jet, you kinda ignore that its real power is the airframe, not the missiles. Starting with the offensive side, especially the cannon, a lot of people have a rough time with the Chinese 23mm cannon because it really takes a lot of skill to lead your shots. It's also a cannon that needs a ton of consistency and practice. It's super common to see someone who's really good with these cannons take a day or two off and suddenly they can't lead like they used to. This cannon in the game is basically the legacy cannon from the MiG-21 and MiG-23, just in case you didn't catch the whole context. Then you might ask me, hey Karma, why are you talking so much about the cannons? Isn't this a jet bracket? So all that matters are the missiles, right? Well guys, if you want to ignore the whole gun kill thing, that's fine, especially if you're just trying to grind faster. But this jet's BR is 11.3, which is honestly kind of miraculous or even questionable depending on how you look at it. But gun kills here are still more than half your frags if you get some good experience and use everything you've got. So mastering this cannon is actually super rewarding and gives you way more return than just focusing on getting frags with the missiles. Like I said, the 23mm cannon on this thing needs a lot of lead and experience to land good shots, so that means the jet has to fly well enough to actually make that possible. And man, this is where I start talking about how this bird flies. The JH7 already flies great at 12.0, but at 11.3, this thing is basically an R-34 Skyline. It's fast, pulls crazy turns at high speed, and has awesome energy retention. All of that is thanks to the British Phantom engines it's got, and I gotta say, the Brits really nailed it here. Low-speed flight is pretty decent too, but the real magic happens when you're above 900 kilometers per hour. I have no idea what that is in knots, and if you don't know either, maybe someone in chat does, so please help us out. The fact is, this jet is insanely good on paper, and it gets even better because of this BR. As a bonus, you sometimes get what are basically 2 extra guaranteed frags, I say sometimes, because the way Snail simulates heat and flares isn't really that great. So some jets at this BR, like the MiG-23, the Phantom itself, and especially the F-5, can pretty much dodge missiles, even if they've got ECCM, some easier than others. The PL5E2 is the missile of the moment, not to mention all the air-to-ground stuff this thing can carry. But that's not really the focus of this video. This is a pilot-to-pilot chat. And speaking of that, let's wrap up the intro and really focus on how matches go for this guy. Let's see if practice matches up with theory. Alright guys, starting with positioning, since you've got good missiles and a ton of countermeasures, and not just a lot, but really good ones too since they're the big caliber ones, you've got some solid defense. So honestly, it doesn't really matter what flight plan you pick. You can fly high, medium, or low, and as long as you pay attention, you've got a good shot at surviving. Personally, I like flying high and taking more defensive or passive routes to pull off that classic top-down missile strategy, which is where ECCM really shines. With this jet, it's even easier to do that because you've got an awesome radar with TWS, so it's easy to manage your routes since you've got a good idea where the enemy is and where they're headed. Picking defensive and passive routes is also a great move because if you play too aggressive, you're stuck without any radar missiles, so when the enemy fires first, you're just left defending yourself, and that's pretty far from ideal in most situations in this bracket. Check out this match as an example. I'm in a good spot to defend myself. It's tough for anyone to come after me because, well, they'd have to get through a bunch of teammates first. I'm planning my route based on where the enemy team is, and if anything unexpected happens, I can totally handle it without getting punished too hard. So honestly, it doesn't get much better than this. Now it's just about making things happen. Since I'm in a 12.0 match, it's not always a good idea to just waste a missile on the first target you see. So picking and planning which target should get taken out with your best weapon is super important. You gotta do that based on how much of a threat the target actually is. I've got an F4J here, which is a pretty solid threat, so everything's lining up for him to get a little kiss from my present. I almost turned into a memory because of the spot system, so those little pops are super important. And obviously, jumping right into the furball isn't always the move either. This strong defense only works because I've got room to extend safely. It's not like the MiG-21 was a problem for me, but in this situation, he had the most energy while the KFIR was way more vulnerable, so I went for the safer play. My team's dropping like flies without doing anything, so getting frags fast is definitely a priority. This is exactly when the airframe shines, guys. Notice how flying defensively like this gets you a bunch of frags for you and your team, since this kind of flying is super good for team play. That is, when you actually have a team. My fuel's getting kinda low, so I'm gonna have to play a bit more aggressive than I'd like. Here, dying is super avoidable because I'm pulling defensive turns at the right time and at the right speed. And in those rare moments when they actually get a good lead on me, I just try to show the smallest profile possible of the aircraft. And just look at how the JH7's airframe is way better than almost anything up to a 0.7 BR range. You can force this kind of play where a lot of jets start having serious maneuverability issues. In this MiG-23's case, he knew he had to have his wings fully extended to even have a shot at getting better lead on me, and that's exactly what happens. Speed in the JH7 is definitely life. He probably got so focused on getting good lead with the cannon and the little ammo he had left that he forgot to watch his speed. The result? He lost one of his wings, which made it super easy for me to head back home. Taking out the last two targets was super easy. I just followed those first tips like a cake recipe. They won't even know where that hit came from. Apparently not all of them, and that's a pretty common problem with the JH7. Not that this guy even realizes it, but this jet doesn't have a super high top speed, so anything really fast like a MiG-23, a Phantom, or an F-11-1 can get away from us pretty easily. So there's no secret here, you just gotta deal with it and be patient. Now just look how much time I spent dealing with this. This is the part where a lot of you go scroll on TikTok, or even worse, hit up Reddit. But every decision still matters if you want to get the frag. Since he's trying to bomb and head back to the airfield, all I need to do is pick a route where there's no way he doesn't run into me. You learned about this in math, right? Intersections. Here's an example. The x-intercept is where a line crosses the x-axis, and the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. Maybe you said you'd never need that and didn't pay much attention in math, but I'm literally using that right now to try and get a frag. This was even better because there was this mountain here acting as a natural obstacle, so he had a choice, the safe way or the easy way. He picked the easy one and sealed his fate. Alright guys, I'm gonna follow those tips I gave you at the start again, but this time I'm going for a way more aggressive flank, flying right where there's supposed to be more enemies. It was a long flight, so I'll speed up the positioning part for anyone who just wants to see the example. In the middle of setting up, I spot a MiG-23, but he was way too fast to try and engage. Even though it was a valid attempt, like I said, with the JH7's top speed, it's just not worth chasing something that's never gonna work out. Why'd you leave me, Maria? Putting the heartbreak aside, it's better for me to focus on the furballs, since that's where the JH7 is an absolute beast, right? I know a lot of you wouldn't have resisted the urge to fire a Fox 2 at that Kernus, but I was playing 12.3, so when something like that showed up, I wanted to be ready for it. This time I didn't even need the missile, but just putting that reminder out there. Told you guys, mastering this cannon is a whole different level. Looks like the enemies are a bit shy right now, so I'm gonna try to get some action with them. When I do, I'll be back. See, just because the missile is OP doesn't mean it's a guaranteed frag. Sometimes when the guy really wants to survive and actually play the game, he can deal with it. Now, it's gonna be a real pain to take out this MiG. Alright, it wasn't that much of a pain, but I had some team play, so I'll cut the guy some slack. Meanwhile, his last two teammates are just cruising around bombing bases, so you already know it's gonna be a pain to find them out there. When I do, I'll be back. It's with great disappointment that I have to break the sad news that one of the last targets was a MiG-23, one of the strongest jets in this bracket, and he was using napalms to take out bases. It took a crazy 6 minutes just to catch up to this guy, but now I finally get to enjoy wrapping up this painful ending. Well, that's it. I did my part. There's one last aardvark way out there, but he's been dogfighting with a teammate for a while, so GG. So I picked this match in particular, even though I've had better ones, because one of those rare high-altitude interceptions happened, which you might run into eventually. Here I also show the right way to handle it, so you can base your gameplay on that. Here's the clip. Even with all the hostility, I'm always trying to keep my route set up to help my teammates and maybe snag a frag or two. There's no secret here, you guys already know how it works. The goal is to keep your speed up and stay defensive the whole time, and eventually I'll get the chance to go on the attack. I've got no doubt that keeping these guys dogfighting with me turned what could have been a loss into just a possible loss. Like I said, this jet is awesome whether you're into duels or team play, and if you play it right, you can really make a huge impact on how your match turns out. Well, the ending made up for all the embarrassing moments I had during the dogfight, all the times I pinned, all the wrong inputs, which I already explained why they're happening. I'm playing with my view partially blocked, and I also changed my settings, so it's honestly really hard to get used to the new controls. Muscle memory really is something amazing, isn't it? But what's really embarrassing is that this time I couldn't manage my fuel properly. I thought I'd take out the Vigan way faster, and now I'm just hoping the match ends before I have to land this jet in some random frozen potato field. At this point, I'm literally praying my team takes out the MiG-23, which is super unlikely since everyone decided the ground AIs look tastier, just gotta deal with it. Fate's cruel. Here's my third death with this jet after 44 kills. And to top it off, one of those deaths was to packet loss. That's where I'm wrapping up this match. Alright guys, here's my last match, no cuts, no commentary, in memory of those who love that old school gameplay. So enjoy and stick with me till the end, where I'll say goodbye to you all properly. Alright folks, that's all for today. Hope you liked it. Do you agree or disagree with anything I said? Tell me down in the comments. Your feedback is super important to me. The video ends, but the chat stays. Karma out.